Losing a dog is like losing a family member. We can just imagine how it feels to lose someone who's been with you every single day of your life. It must leave a hole in your heart, and no one wants something like that happening to them. This can be said about any pet a person or family could have: a cat, a parrot, or even a goldfish. But yet, somehow, dogs always seem to have a special place in our homes and hearts. Let's see what happened to this family's dog. Meet the Robles, a family from Texas. They lost their golden Labrador back in summer 2016. Her name was Lola. Upon realizing their beloved animal was nowhere to be found, they were devastated. Immediately, they started looking for the dog. After a few months without the dog, they gave up all hope. The children were so sad, and even their mother was feeling impotent for not being able to do something and find the missing dog. After all, Labrador Lola was a significant part of their family, and now they were missing her very much. Even though they felt helpless, they never gave up on their hope. Even when they realized that Lola couldn't be alive for so long if no one fed her, they still believed that there are good people over there who maybe took her to their home and gave her some food. Yet they couldn't even imagine the surprise they were going to experience. Neither of the children from the Robles family could believe what would be the outcome of their long quest for their lost pet. Still, all they had was hope that the family would soon be reunited. The family had a few possible scenarios in their heads about what could have happened to the poor dog. The best option in their minds was that some stranger took her and kept her imprisoned in his home. Another scenario said that since Lola was so playful, she could be hit by a car or a truck. What all of them agreed was the fact that the dog was very trustful and innocent. So it could have happened that she took some food from an ill-intentioned stranger who poisoned her. All in all of these speculations the family had were making them blue. As a preventive measure, the family got their beloved pet microchip the moment they got her, but no one knew that the microchip would actually be helpful one day. They didn't know that Lola would run away from home one day and never be returned. Or did she? Estella Robles, the mother, didn't think that the dog had run away because there were no obvious reasons for that. She was well-fed, well-groomed, and after all, everyone loved her. So why would any pet run away from the perfect environment? It simply didn't make any sense. In the past, Lola was left alone outside of their home and yard, but always managed to return. So it wasn't clear what could have gone wrong this time. When the family checked the statistics on the percentage of lost dogs who were returned to their owners, the numbers disappointed them. The numbers they found on the site of the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, according to a survey from 2012, said that more than 80% of the lost dogs who were found were sent to shelters. In other words, more than 80% of the dog owners who lost their dogs had no ideas their dogs were waiting for them in dog shelters. Estella Robles and her family didn't know what to believe in, whether her dog was found and kept in some shelter, or perhaps it was killed in an accident. All in all, the predictions were not good. After all, more than 5 months have gone by and there was no real news about the dog. Truth be told, they were receiving some calls from strangers who told them they might have seen the dog, but all these calls were dead-end. Still, one day, Isla received a call which was different. That call changed everything. Many people had called the family telling stories about how they'd seen Lola, but none of these stories helped the family find the dog they loved. Even some relatives and friends joined the search for the lost dog, but alas, without success. Until one day. All the previous calls and clues they got were leading to a similarly looking dog, but it always turned out that the dog in question wasn't Lola. Of course, none of the family members wanted to settle for a replacement dog, especially not the kids. No one believed that the dog would be found when the entire year passed upon Lola's missing. Still, the kids and their parents didn't want to give up on their hopes for Lola's homecoming. One day, the Robles family got a sudden call from the Dallas Animal Services, which changed everything. Estella Robles picked up the phone and her face lighted up. Do you want to know what was the news she got from the Dallas Animal Services? Of course. Here's the details. We've already mentioned that the Golden Labrador had a microchip implanted in her skin. Yes, it was of crucial importance in this case since Dallas Animal Services used it to find the owners of the dog. They found the owner's information on Lola's microchip and gave Miss Estella Robles a call. Miss Robles immediately went to see the dog. When she reached Dallas Animal Services and saw the dog, it seemed that everything was okay with her. She'd even gained some weight. So Mrs. Robles was bewildered by this whole situation. Mrs. Robles couldn't wait to spread the good news, but somehow she managed to prevent herself from doing it before she reached her home. She knew that her two kids, Jessalyn and Joshua, would be thrilled to see the dog after so much time, but decided to spice up the surprise. Now you'll hear how it happened, and you can even see the recording online since she had the whole reunion filmed. Now you'll hear how it happened, and you can even see the recording since she had the whole reunion filmed. Now we'll give our best to describe the event, if maybe you aren't able to see the video, which was viral at one point. At the beginning of the video, we can see two kids, Jessalyn and Joshua, in the kitchen talking to a woman who's filming them. She tells them to go outside and meet their mother by the car. The children find it strange and they look confused, like, why should we do that? But they go anyway. While they're leaving the kitchen, the camera's following them towards the SUV parked in front of the garage. Their mother's standing by the car with a smile on her face. Upon approaching the SUV, the girl sees something furry in the SUV. The kids might have thought that their parents finally decided to help them get over Lola by replacing her with another dog of the same breed. Still, that wasn't the case. Their mother didn't want to do that because she knew that Lola would come back one day. "What the heck? Did you get a dog?" asked Jessalyn, surprised by the presence of a furry friend. Not in their wildest dreams did they dream about their beloved golden Labrador returning home after so many days of absence. Upon seeing the kids, the golden lab jumped out of the car and walked towards them. The kids are speechlessly looking at the sight of their long-time no-see family member. They're not sure if that's Lola or some replacement dog. The mother hugs Jessalyn, saying, "It's Lola." Not until the moment Isla hugged her daughter did Jessalyn realize the miracle they were witnessing. Unbelievable! The dog's back home after so many days and nights, thinking and praying for her and hoping for a return. The kids started laughing and crying at the same time. The family simply can't stop hugging. They're so happy for having their Lola back that they can't stop hugging. They're hugging each other, then hugging Lola, then hugging each other again. The kids are laughing and smiling both singly and simultaneously. At some point, the mother says, "We have Lola back. Do you believe it?" And not only did they get her back, but she's also in great condition, even with some extra pounds. They can't help but wonder where she's been all this time. Can you guess? Could she get so much weight in a shelter? Is the food there so good? When Mrs. Robles got a call from Dallas Animal Services, they informed her about the state of the dog, i.e. that the dog was well fed. It was a conclusion they made based on the fact that she was fat. Apparently the dog had great care during her absence from home, but where did she actually spend this time? Of course, what's most important is the fact that Lola's finally back home and the family's complete again. She simply cannot stop running through the garden she used to spend all her time in. While Lola runs through the garden checking if all the stuff she once left was there, the family members can't stop themselves from asking, where was she all this time? After all, it's been more than a year since they last saw her, and here she is now, as happy as before, with a few extra pounds. "Can you believe we have Lola?" says Mrs. Robles at some point, letting the kids kiss the dog after jumping around the garden. While Joshua's playing with his pet, he's asking his mother, where did she find Lola? Isla explains that the dog was wandering the streets when people found her and took her to the shelter. People at the shelter realized Lola had a chip, and after that it was easy to reach them. Unbelievable, right? Well, not exactly. It would be impossible to find this dog if she didn't have a chip, but she did. So basically, the family saved her life in advance by inserting the microchip into her skin. At one point in the video, the mother says, "Everybody rub her belly." Apparently, she thinks it was the part Lola missed the most. Well, of course, if she was used to such treatment in the past when she was at home before she roamed into the unknown. The video was published on Facebook under the title, "This dog is about to reunite with her family after she was missing for over a year." The reactions of people who have seen the video have been amazing. Just keep watching to see some of them yourself. For a rather short period of time after publishing, the video got thousands of shares and comments. People were simply amazed by the fact that the dog was found after so much time. We believe that no one expected this miracle. Most of the reactions can still be found and read on the original post, but here we're going to describe some of them for you. To make you realize how people can be unselfish and emotional, we'll talk about the best of the best comments. This is perhaps the best message we get from this story. It's important to get our pets chipped, even though they don't actually want to leave us. Sometimes it happens that they simply wander off and can't find their way back home. One of the comments on the published video said, "It's so important to get your pets chipped. That way, dogs like Lola can be found and returned to their proper homes." Isn't this the point we all got after hearing about Lola's story? In their wildest dreams, the Robles family didn't dream that their beloved Lola would leave them. Then, when they realized she was gone, their nightmare started. Now, after a whole year of hope and despair, they're reunited with their golden Labrador. We can only assume what could have happened with the poor animal if she didn't have a chip with her owner's information. Maybe she would be kept in the shelter for the rest of her life, while her family would miss her so much. Despite the happy ending, some questions couldn't be avoided. Why wasn't the family contacted much sooner? Why did the whole year pass if the dog had a chip the entire time? When was she actually taken from the streets? Did she wander the streets for a whole year? The viewers of the video couldn't help but notice how chubby the dog is and wondered if she was kept as a pet by another family. Did she feel like home there while she was given all the food and care she needed? Dallas Animal Services didn't have a 100% sure answer to the questions, but they themselves assumed that the dog was kept by some other family as a pet. Yes, this is exactly what everybody thought upon seeing how fat Lola is. The probable story is that someone saw this golden Labrador roaming the streets hungry and exhausted, looking for her way home, and he or she decided to feed her and give her shelter. Lola might enjoy the care for some time but missed her owners and decided to run away from her helper's home. The organization found Lola in the streets and immediately called the owners. They were surprised themselves when the family told them that Lola had been missing for a whole year. If she lived in the streets for the entire time, she wouldn't be so clean and chubby. Upon talking to Mrs. Robles, the people from the services agreed on the time they would come to pick up her lovely pet. When Lola saw Mrs. Robles, she wasn't able to hide her happiness and probably could hardly wait to go home and see the children. Now, when Lola's safe and sound at home, the whole family can relax and enjoy their days to come. She'll probably be careful from now on not to lose her way home ever again. After all, this entire experience was so stressful that she might have gotten all those pounds on out of stress. What do you think? Is it possible for a dog to gain weight out of stress? We know people can, but what about dogs? Do they eat comfort food like people? Up next, a decade later, she never gave up hope about her lost dog. If you're a dog owner, we're sure you're aware of the love humans have for their furry companions. There's a reason dogs are often called a man's best friend. They aren't just pets, they're incredible beings that express unconditional love and compassion to their owners. For the dog, the feeling's mutual. Research has shown that dogs feel the most confident and excited exploring the world with their human owners rather than other dogs. Studies have proven that they can feel certain emotions that humans feel, such as joy, jealousy, and even love. It's no doubt that dogs have amazing effects on our nervous system. They allow us to feel more calm and content in their presence. They also improve our overall health. If you're a dog owner, you're more likely to spend time outside with your pet. This regulates blood flow and promotes heart health, and can ultimately improve your social life. Humans form intense, lifelong bonds with their dogs. The dog's owner's biggest fear is something happening to their fluffy friends. That's why when Catherine Strang's beloved dog, Duchess, went missing in 2007, she was completely devastated. Our story starts off in February 2007 on a sunny day in Orlando, Florida. It was a typical day in the Strang residence. Catherine finally arrived home after a long day at work. From the moment she entered, she noticed something strange. Her front door was left slightly open. She feared perhaps someone broke into her house. She immediately rushed to her 12-year-old son, who arrives home from school a bit before Catherine finishes work. It turns out that Catherine's son simply left the door open to the house and forgot to close it after he got home from school. Catherine felt relieved that she figured out the cause of the open door, but something still seemed off. Catherine and her son did a quick check around the house to make sure everything was in its place, and she eventually sat on the couch to relax after her long workday. However, she still felt as though something was missing, and then it suddenly hit her. Where's Duchess? Duchess normally comes running to greet Catherine the moment she arrives home from work. Catherine then realized how strange it was that her puppy didn't come to say hello to her today when she got back home. Catherine immediately began to worry that something had happened to Duchess. She started to frantically search around to find her precious fox terrier. She and her son checked every room in the house, praying Duchess just fell asleep in one of the bedrooms or was busy playing with a toy somewhere. Duchess, a typically very obedient 2-year-old dog, normally responds right away when her owners call out for her. That's why Catherine entered panic mode when she was greeted with dead silence after calling out her dog's name. Can you imagine the utter fear running through Catherine's mind? She knew something had to be terribly wrong for her well-mannered pup to ignore her calls out for her. In the heat of the moment, Catherine's motherly instincts kicked in. The stress caused her to expect the worst when it came to Duchess's whereabouts. Perhaps someone had come into the house and taken her, or she ran far, far away and she somehow wouldn't be able to find her way back home. Catherine's biggest fear was that Duchess's life was suddenly and painfully taken away from her. The Strangs Orlando home was located on a fairly busy street with plenty of traffic. All Catherine could do was pray that Duchess knew to stay away from the cars speeding down the road. Reality began to set in for Catherine. She accepted the fact that her dear Duchess was officially a lost dog. The months following Duchess's disappearance were almost unbearable for the dog's devastated owner. Catherine was determined to track down her pup, making hundreds of lost dog signs and posting them all across Orlando. She made daily visits to the local animal shelter, praying someone had found Duchess and dropped her off to be picked up by her rightful owner. A desperate Catherine tried her best not to lose hope and continued to spread the word to everyone she knew. The consequences of Duchess's tragic disappearance were starting to put a heavy strain on Catherine's life. She was spending less and less time with her family and friends. Checking the local animal shelter daily was taking serious time out of her everyday life. The daily trips made it difficult to clock in hours at her job, which she needed to support her family. The emotional effects were just as significant. All of Catherine's thoughts and energy were dedicated to finding her beloved dog. Her heart broke a little bit more every time she left the shelter empty-handed. As much as it hurt her, Catherine realized it was time for her to take a step back. She needed to bring her focus back to her own life, for her sake and for her family's sake. She began cutting down on the animal shelter trips and checked the shelters occasionally rather than daily. She spent less time hanging up flyers and more time at work with her family. Catherine understood part of her needed to let go. However, she never forgot about her beloved Duchess. Catherine and her family never lost hope that someday Duchess would come running back to them. Time passed, and every year was just another year Catherine and her family had to go on without their furry family member. As Catherine's life continued, she couldn't help but feel that something crucial was missing. She knew Duchess was the only thing that could fill that void in her life. At one point, the family even debated getting another dog, but Catherine couldn't follow through with it. She knew that no dog would ever be able to replace her dear Duchess, and she still had hope that she'd come back. Even though Catherine thought a new dog might help her get closure from the situation, she didn't want to take that step until she knew for sure there was no way Duchess was coming back. According to Catherine, until she heard otherwise, Duchess was still alive. Luckily, Duchess was equipped with a microchip before she went missing. If she was found and brought to a shelter, they'd scan the chip to obtain access to Catherine's contact details, and they could be reunited. Catherine continued to pay a yearly fee to keep Duchess's microchip activated. As the years went by, Catherine continued on with her daily life. She kept her focus on her work life and family. Occasionally, her mind wandered back to Duchess. She often reminisced about the memories she had with her dog. She hoped that wherever Duchess was, she was happy and healthy. Even after all this time, she still remained optimistic regarding Duchess's return. Paying the yearly $15 fee for the microchip was her way of showing she still hasn't completely let go. She hoped one day the payments would be worth it. 12 years after Duchess's disappearance, on October 7th, it was a normal autumn day in the Strang household. Catherine didn't know she'd suddenly get a phone call that would change everything. Her phone rang, and the caller ID showed an area code that Catherine was unfamiliar with. She answered the phone suspiciously and was in shock by what she heard on the other line. The voice on the phone was actually an employee from the Humane Animal Rescue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. They were calling to notify Catherine that they'd found her dog. At first, Catherine was in complete and utter shock by the phone call. She couldn't believe what she was hearing, and it took her a few moments to actually process what the shelter volunteer was telling her. well over a decade since Duchess had run away, Catherine couldn't begin to understand how her dog's actually been found nearly 12 years later. Once she begun to comprehend the significance of the phone call, a million questions started to fill Catherine's head. How could this be? Out of all the questions running through Catherine's mind, the biggest one was how in the world Duchess ended up in Pittsburgh. The city's almost 1,000 miles from the Strang's home in Orlando. Throughout the years of looking for Duchess, Catherine had always kept the search somewhat local. Her shelter visits and lost dog signs were restricted to the Central Florida area. When she pictured finding Duchess again, she assumed the dog would have been picked up by some family in the Orlando area. Catherine never would have expected Duchess would turn up on the other side of the country. The story seems so unlikely to Catherine that she assumed the Pittsburgh Humane Society could have possibly mistaken Duchess for another dog. When Duchess first went missing, Catherine was bombarded by phone calls from strangers that they believe found the missing pup. Fox Terriers are a relatively common dog breed, so it was natural that Duchess was often mistaken for other dogs. Nonetheless, Catherine was disappointed and discouraged every time she thought she was finally going to be reunited with her dear puppy. And it ended up being a false alarm. This made it difficult for Catherine to trust the Humane Society that they had found the real Duchess. Catherine knew she had to see it to believe it. Her first instinct was to travel immediately to the Humane Society to confirm it really was Duchess. She searched for the earliest flight out of Boca Raton, where she now lived, to Pittsburgh. Unfortunately, flights to Pittsburgh were very expensive on such short notice. She realized her best option would be to load up a gas tank and embark on a road trip to reunite with her pup. She packed her bag and set off on a 15-hour overnight drive. You're probably wondering how Duchess really ended up all the way in Pittsburgh. Meanwhile, it was a typical Sunday evening in a small town called Carnegie outside Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. A couple sitting in their living room when they heard a bizarre rustling noise coming from their backyard. When they went outside to see where the noise was coming from, they noticed a small animal hiding under the storage shed. The couple looked closer and identified that it was a skinny, terrified dog with long and overgrown nails. The couple had no idea whose dog it was, how it got there, and how long it had been out there hiding under the storage shed. Their first instinct was to get in touch with their local animal shelter. They made a call to the Pittsburgh Humane Society, who came quickly to the couple's home to pick up the terrified dog. The Humane Society staff member who found her described Duchess's state as hungry, shivering, and in serious need of a nail trim. The staff member was able to scan Duchess's microchip during the veterinary examination. They traced Duchess back to an owner from Boca Raton, Florida. After a long and suspenseful road trip, Catherine finally arrived at the Pittsburgh Humane Society. Though she felt exhausted after a sleepless night of travel, Catherine was thrilled to hopefully reunite with her long-lost dog after all these years. Despite her excitement, Catherine tried not to get her hopes up too high. Who knows, maybe the dog they found wasn't actually Duchess. Even though she fit the description, so many years have gone by. It seemed unlikely that it was actually her dog. And assuming that it was Duchess, would she even recognize Catherine after all this time apart? Catherine patiently waited for her questions to be answered in the lobby of the Humane Society. After 12 years of waiting to reunite with her dog, she wasn't sure if she was prepared for the intensity of the upcoming moment. A Humane Society staff member entered the waiting room with a small, shaking pup in hand. The second Catherine laid eyes on the dog, she immediately recognized that it was her dear Duchess. Catherine spread her arms open wide to welcome her long-lost love into her arms, which she hadn't seen in over a decade. Catherine couldn't believe her eyes. It was actually her. Due to the fact that she probably wasn't used to being around that many people in so many years, Duchess was a bit out of it. Naturally, the 14-year-old dog was exhausted from her many days of travel, but no one had any idea what kind of trauma she could have experienced during that time. Overall, Duchess was in fairly good shape, considering what she'd been through. Most importantly, she was alive and finally reunited with her grateful owner. Luckily, the Humane Society had set up a camera prepared to record the emotional reunion. Cameras flashed and there wasn't a dry eye in the room as Catherine held Duchess in her lap for the first time in 12 years. "They're like your babies. You just don't give up hope," Catherine explained tearfully during their reunion. The 15-minute video's gone viral with over 100,000 views. Catherine inspires us to stay optimistic, even when the situation seems hopeless. She also teaches the importance of microchipping our dogs. The Humane Society offered a half-off special after Duchess's homecoming to encourage owners to microchip